Our call. This is not the morning, probably for just about everyone on this call. But we are here today doing our morning or our daily call just as we always do. Because just as always, I have things I need to share with you. I have ideas you guys desperately need. I'm in the chats, I'm answering questions, I'm on the calls with you guys, and I see gaps. I see gaps between your knowledge and what you need in order to be successful. And so I address those on these daily calls. I give you guys daily lessons. I work those into the boot camp. I work those into the other training videos. And today I have a really important one I want to talk with you guys about. It's a perspective. It's an understanding on how the world works that is going to make it much easier for you to learn what we have inside the boot camp and apply it. Because, and honestly, this is probably one of the biggest gaps and probably the biggest indicators of maturity in a copywriter. When I say maturity, I don't mean like how old you are, but how with it you are, how much you've connected and understood how the world works. Is how well you understand the difference between principles and practices. And your ability to understand the difference between these two and parse that nuance is going to be extremely, extremely important when it comes time for you to start reaching out to clients, when it comes time for you to start writing for your people. So let's just dive right in. As far as announcements goes, before we dive just right in, next week, we're going to be doing our review call. We're going to be doing our sales call as normal, just like we always do. Or not our sales call. We're going to be doing our copy review call as normal. And we're going to be doing I think we'll probably do a follow-up on the swipe file review this Friday, just kind of like we did this last week beforehand. However, also be aware, I have a minor surgical procedure, just an eye thing that I need to take care of early this next week. So there might be a period of time where those answers in the Ask Professor Andrew channel come in a little slower at a slightly different time. And that's just me recovering from that. So just kind of be aware of that moving forward, but shouldn't be any kind of major issue for anybody inside the channel. I've got some new trainings that I'll be filming on Monday before that happens, though, to release the campus. So you guys should have plenty of awesome, really cool material in the meantime while I go through that minor surgical procedure. But it shouldn't disrupt our schedule any more than that. So keep that in mind. I see in the chats that some of you guys are running into issues logging in. That should all be cleared up by now. If you haven't tried in the last 60 seconds, go ahead and refresh and try that out. You should be able to log in now. I know they pushed an update to the server and it takes a while for that to propagate across all the other servers. So you guys should be able to log in now, no problem. So with that being said, we've covered all of the little nitpicky housekeeping things we need to take care of. We're doing this in a slightly different time because I have things I had to take care of at a normal time today, this Sunday morning. So but we're getting this lesson to you guys today. So let's talk about the difference between principles and practice. So what do those terms even mean? Well, in life, in the world, there are sort of these eternal truths. There are these sort of scientific facts about how the world works and how people work. There's human nature. There's these basic laws of human persuasion. And then there's a million different ways that you can apply them, right? And a really good way to kind of think about this is music, right? There's certain notes in music. There's these certain sort of mathematical laws behind music between the different notes and the scales and major scales, minor scales, this, that, the other thing. There's a whole bunch of laws of how that works, basic principles. But there's an endless variety of music, and there's an endless variety of ways to apply those individual principles. And no one way is bad and no one way is good, right? It's not like, Beethoven was better than Mozart, or Mozart was better than Beethoven, was better than Elvis Presley. It's not like there's any kind of, it's not like one is better or worse than the other. They're just different. They're applying those same principles in different scenarios in different ways, and they resonate differently with different people, right? That's one example, like with the music, right? There's the laws of music, and then there's these principles of music, and then there's the application or the practice of music. It can be extremely varied, right? Here's an example of sort of a hiccup that people have with this, right? And you'll see how this plays out in copywriting. I grew up in Southeast Texas listening to classic country music, and I'm talking stuff from the 90s, the 80s, old country music, right? And that was music. That's right. That's what I knew as music growing up. And then I remember there was a lot of my friends from school, and they were listening to hip hop and stuff like that. I remember talking to some of my family members, and they're like, yeah, that's not music. Talking about hip hop, for example, right? That's not music. This is music. Like, this is country music. This is music. That's not music. When in reality, they're both music, right? They're both applying the same principles in slightly different ways, emphasizing that one versus this one, this strength versus that weakness, different areas, but it's still music, and it still creates that effect. It's just different, right? But to call it not music is kind of short-sighted, right? It all sort of stems from this core of music. And then there's these different ways to apply these different genres, right? And the same thing happens with copywriting. There are these core principles. And I teach you these things. There's desire, there's pain, there's roadblocks, there's solutions, there's curiosity, there's intrigue, there's imagery. There's sort of these eternal laws. There's supply and demand. There are these principles. And there's a million ways to apply them, right? There's a million ways to write a headline, a million ways to do outreach. There's a million ways to do all of that. These core principles are always the same. But there's a million different ways to do the actual copywriting, the actual writing and persuasion that are all equally as effective in different scenarios, right? Absolutely equally effective. Some are better suited for one scenario versus another, right? Let's say one way of addressing the reader might work really well if they've got a strong ego or a weak ego. It might not work so well the other way. So context matters a lot, and also personal preference matters a lot. But there's a lot of different ways to apply those core principles. And when you're reviewing copy, when you're reviewing your own stuff and you're trying to apply it, you shouldn't get hung up in the principle and like the actual application. Like a lot of people get focused on the actual practice and they're like, oh, I can write a DIC, an HSO, and a PAS email. That's what I know how to do. And sure, those are the actual applications that you know how to do, but the principles underneath are what you're truly learning, and they can be applied a million different ways. So as you're going through the boot camp, as you're learning these lessons, as you're learning how to do outreach, as you're reviewing other people's copy and reviewing copy from the swipe file and stuff like that, don't get so hung up on the actual application, the style of the copy, so much as you pay attention to the principles at play. If you pay attention to the principles at play and evaluate how well they execute on those fundamental principles, then all of this stuff can kind of like, it can change, it can be different, right? I review a lot of people's outreach. I take a look at different things that people share. And I try and pay attention to the principles, right? So like they'll ask me like, do you need compliments? And I'm like, you don't really need a compliment. A compliment's just a style, right? It's just a practice. What you do need to do over here is you need to follow the principle of personalization. You need to follow the principle of giving value and showing up as a peer. Like those are some principles you need to achieve. And there's a million different styles or ways to do that. And compliment's one of them. But instead of getting hung up on the style, you should focus on the principle. And this applies to outreach. This applies to the actual copy that you write. What matters most is the principle. And one of the easiest ways to shift your focus away from the style, and style is important. You need to make sure you execute on the style that you choose well. But then one of the easiest ways to shift your focus from that to the actual principles at play is to follow the questions in the how to review copy training I put inside of the video mini trainings inside of the courses. So go into courses, go to general resources, go to video mini trainings, and there's a training in there. And I think it's like how to review copy in the most selfless way possible or something like that. And I have a training there that shows you how to review and analyze copy to learn the most from it and to be able to improve your own stuff as quickly as possible, right? There's 5 or 6 questions I give you in there. And those questions help you shift your focus from the outside form of something towards the actual inner execution of the principles and how well they do that, and help you learn those principles so then you can apply them better, right? What's on the outside is important, but it only works if the stuff on the inside is correct. Some people follow the format. They'll copy and paste the template. They'll follow the practice of, like, let's say the 3 email outreach that I talk about in the boot camp. They'll copy that style exactly the same, right? The style is perfectly the same, but the principles aren't there. That they're not actually personalizing. They're not actually adding anything valuable. They're just taking the form and running without the actual principles as the foundation. And it never works. And they're worried, like, why doesn't it work? Why doesn't it work? And I always tell them, hey, look, you follow the form, you follow the practice without actually doing the principles and achieving the objective at the heart of it, right? And that how to review your copy questions, those 5 questions. If you haven't watched the training, go watch it. But those trainings, like those questions, will help you shift your focus from the form towards the actual objective you're trying to accomplish as a copywriter, and help you grab and marshal all the resources you need as a copywriter and bring them to play so that you can actually achieve those results. That's a helpful way. Once you start reviewing copy like that, you'll start writing copy like that. If you review copy looking at the principles, looking at the objectives that they do, you'll start to write copy based on the objectives that you're trying to perform, not so much what template do I need to copy. You'll be like, what objective do I need to accomplish, and what's the best way to do that? And this shift happens when you learn to understand the difference between what a principle is and what a practice is. People get hung up with this in all sorts of different places in life. What's the actual true scientific, the law of nature, what we call the solution inside of this campus, right? What's the if then, the truth at play here, right? and what is the way we apply it over here. How do we apply that law in the different ways? What are the different ways we can apply that law? If you can understand the difference between those two, you'll learn faster. You won't get hung up, stuck on following details that don't matter. You'll follow the principles and be able to adapt in the when it comes to practice. I think it was Thomas Jefferson that said, with matters of style, flow like the water, but with matters of principle, stand firm like the rock. And this is very true with this thing, within copywriting. With matters of style, like what platform or this or that, or this type of copy, that type of copy, with the style, be willing to move like the water. Be willing to change and adapt. But with the principles, the key aspects of human persuasion, the stuff I teach in the Advanced Influence course, the stuff I teach in the boot camp, be firm like a rock, because that's the stuff you need to be really, really dialed in on, because that's what's going to give you success. And you need to make sure that you can adapt the style to match the needs and the context of where you're at. If you can understand the difference between these two things and apply them in your search to learn and master your skill as a copywriter, you'll learn faster. You'll avoid the traps of thinking that keeps you from progressing forward, and you'll blast past the competition, land clients, write extremely good copy, because you're learning the principles and adapting your style. It's a huge game changer, and it's one of the biggest differentiators between a good copywriter and a great copywriter. So take this perspective, review your own work, or review what you've been doing the last few days, see where you've gotten hung up on the style, see where you can focus more on the principles, see how you can execute better on the principles moving forward. And I'm telling you guys, this can help you achieve more faster. It's been a good call. It's been a little bit different time, slightly different situation than normal, but we will be doing this again tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, we'll have our morning power up call. I should have some new trainings to release for you guys tomorrow as well. So keep your eye on announcements. We'll keep this thing going. It's been great talking to you guys today. Take this information, use it to improve yourself, use it to improve your execution on the principles, use it to make more money and improve your life. I will talk with you guys again tomorrow.